vierihoitowebinaarista seuraavaksi. And so we are starting our third section of the cow and calf webinar here in 4th of February 2025. And next we have Charles Ellet speaking to us. And okay, let's continue.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to you. It's a very wet and windy day here in Scotland, but a pleasure to be with you. So thank you very much for the invitation. I'm going to start the presentation just by giving you some the background story to how we became the ethical dairy. If we could change the slide to the next slide, that'd be great.
Yes, I'm sorry, this is a little bit slow now. This might. Oh, this comes a little bit.
There we go.
Do you want me to put all the text?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
So the Rainton farm is where the ethical dairy is based, owned and managed by the Finlay family since the 1920s. David's father bought the farm outright after the Second World War. And the farm is currently managed by David and his wife, Wilma. They've been running the farm now for about 30 years. In 1999, they took the decision to convert to organic farming. Previous to that had been a conventionally run operation with just a very small scale dairy, only maybe 30, 40 cows, but a lot of sheep. We were mainly a sheep farm at that time. David took over from his father, as I say, about 30 years ago, and then through pressure from the industry, pressure from family as well, they decided to convert to organic farming in 1999. But David and Wilma are also looking at different diversification projects for the business, and if we can change the slide, they included Cream of Galloway visitor attraction. It was based around an ice cream brand. Wilma had a background in business. They wanted to look at what they could do to add value to the products that were produced on the farm. And this is a very tourist dense area, especially through the Easter holidays, through the summertime. The population of Dumfries and Galloway is only about 60,000 people, but that greatly increases through those times of the year. So the ice cream was a major draw for the public. They put on a small playground, this going back again about 30 years. But it got to a point where we were having so many visitors that we needed to expand. And what eventually was created was a visitor centre, a tea room, play areas for the children, an extensive adventure playground through the woodlands that were nearby, nature trails, cycle tracks, specific dog walking area. And in the early 2000s, when I arrived at the farm, we had anything up to 75,000 visits a year. So an extremely busy place. But it wasn't just about the products that we were creating. We also wanted to get the message across in terms of how we're farming and what we wanted to do. If you could change the slide again, thank you. A separate diversification, which is more recent. It's been in the last 10 or 12 years that we've incorporated cheese into a diversification as well. And that was purely focused around the ethical dairy and the cow and calf system that we're now operating. Historically, cheese had been made on the farm until 1970s, and they were keen to bring that back to the farm. It always gone very well in the past. And again, thank you. So as I mentioned, dairy, beef and sheep is the operation. 850 acres. We're about 1.5 miles from the coast, as you can see from the picture. It's all permanent pasture and improved grassland. So There had been some oats grown in the past, some turnips, that sort of thing. But now it's just a completely permanent pasture farm. And in the past, as I say, we got to a maximum of 90 Ayrshire and Swedish Red Cross cows, a closed herd, and we've maintained that closed herd for the last 30 years now. In the past, we had approximately 500 sheep and then a 40 beef suckler cows as well. We retained all the dairy heifers, as I said, for the closed herd, but we were finishing dairy bulls and all the Angus cross from the dairy were finished on farm. This gave us some degree of control, and obviously economically it was good for us to do it. However, with the dairy bulls, it was taking a long time to get them to finishing weight. Most of them were going over 30 months. We did at one point start to process them ourselves with a local abattoir and bring them back to serve in the tea room, which went very well when we had huge visitor numbers. But there were, from 2008 onwards, there was a general decline in the visitors to the farm, and we stopped doing the finishing them ourselves. Okay, thank you. So going back to the early 2000s, we had the a very old building, really, a 6-a-side parlour, as you can see from the picture on the right there. No modern equipment at all. You had to program in what the cows wanted to feed each cow. Everything was manual, and it was just becoming very tired, very old, and we needed to look at something for the future. At the time, though, we were separating calves, as you can see on the left-hand side there, single pens to begin with for the first 3 to 4 days, and then into larger groups of about 8 calves per pen, but in old stone byres, and it worked very well. It was a good system, but we felt we could do something better. Housing wise for the cows, again, a very old building. Was actually, this is the picture on the bottom left there, shows the cubicles, and that was repeated on the opposite side of the center of the shed where the silage clamp was, with a feed barrier that you can see there in the front of the photo. So it was needing updating, and that gave us an opportunity. Thank you. Because of the farm tours on the at Creamer Galloway, and these were giving us the opportunity to take members of the public around and show them the different areas of the farm, talk about the farming system, why we changed to organic. At the time, it wasn't something that was wasn't a huge amount of uptake in the UK. People were still learning about it, and we felt we had a really good ability to present that to the public by taking them around areas of the farm. It used to allow them to, obviously the kids loved seeing the cows being milked, and meeting the young stock as well on the farm. So it was really about showing the people, the public, changing their perception of what happens on a farm, and explaining to them why we do it. Now, this brought up one main question, and it came back time and time again, usually from the wives and mothers of the people on the tours, and that was, why do you take the calves away from the cows? And obviously we gave the simple answer that, to enable us to get the milk from the cow, that we took the calf away, and explained that whole idea. But the more and more that question was asked, the more we were like, well, why are we doing it? Is there a different way? Is it possible to do a cow and calf system? And at the time, it was very difficult to find anywhere that was doing it. But we looked into where we could go and see it in practice, some of the theory behind it, which was very, very basic. And we're talking now, this is around about 2008. So it's been a long time in progressing to where we are now. At the same time, I was doing a postgraduate diploma with SRUC, which is the Scottish Rural College. My present postgraduate dissertation, David said to me, well, I'd like you to look at what is the future for the farm and what direction could we possibly go. And while you're at it, can you just have a look at this cow and calf system? So again, did some more research and presented an idea through my dissertation, which I'm thankful now has come to fruition. So there's probably not many graduates that can say they actually are doing their dissertation. We were getting more and more dissatisfied as well with the direction of the UK dairy industry. The demand that we follow a certain practice or a certain system, financially, it was a big strain on the farm, and we felt we wanted to go in a different direction. We were not just looking at how we farm, but how we manage the land, particularly helping nature along at the same time. So the cow and calf system, not only did it give us something that interesting and new that we were excited about, it gave us an opportunity to modernize the farm, and with the availability of EU grant funding for new projects at the time, we put in a bid, and we're very grateful to win it. Thank you. But in order to tender for that bid, we had to look at who else was doing it, a cow and calf system, and what we found was that predominantly that was happening in Europe, and about 8 of us took a trip across to the Netherlands, visited 2 or 3 farms to have a look, and it was fascinating to see it in practice, but they tended to be on the smaller scale, maybe 10 to 30 cows. It was often a way of labour saving, so that whoever was farming there could do the other parts of the operation. A lot of them were mixed farms with arable or something on the side, and by having the calves at foot, it meant that they could concentrate on those areas at particular times, only having to milk once a day, and the calf essentially doing the second milking. It meant they didn't have to hire in a calf rearer, and it was a model that we thought was possible. Most people at the time were only doing this. Cow and calf contact was only limited to about 12 weeks, so what we would normally do on the bucket rearing. But they were finding there was a lot of problems in terms of pneumonia, the stress from the system, and actually by having the calf and that bond getting stronger, and then removing the calf after a period of time, both cow and calf were having stress-related issues, mastitis, all those sorts of things. Thank you. So we thought we could do it better. Little did we know. Initially, we decided that we were going to build. The circular picture in the center there shows you how the farm looked at the time. And the digger in the top right-hand photograph is how we transformed that. We basically cut away half of that hill and sited the dairy in there. We got £1.5 million in terms of funding. We had to supply about, I think, a third of that to get the grant. We then have invested further with another £500,000 in turning what was the old calf housing area into the cheese production facility, and we've done all that ourselves. We had a large team on the farm. One of the guys on the farm who's retired 18 months ago now was a self-taught builder, and we bought the kit from a local firm and built the site ourselves. So it did take us 4 years to actually construct the dairy. but very satisfying. And we got exactly what we wanted by doing that as well. Thank you. And that created our new home. The parlour is a 5-a-side auto tandem parlour, so the cows actually stand side onto as you're standing there to milk them. It's all automated, and the cows walk in with a sensor on their leg that IDs them. So it's all auto ID, and a very good setup for this system. We chose that parlour specifically because it gives you an outside passageway where the cows walk in, and that allows any calves that do come to the parlour to just walk past or stand next to mum. And we found very quickly that having that contact time at milking really did help with milk letdown. I love this parlour. I've milked large rotary parlours and your traditional herringbones, swing over parlours. This is my favourite because you're never having to wait for the slowest cow. You can treat every cow as an individual, and it gives you a better view of the animal, so you can pick up on any issues far quicker, I feel, than just looking at the rear of the cow. It also gives the cow a lot of confidence in us. Not only are we putting the unit on in front of her rear leg, so that it's going in the same manner as the calf will suckle, but it's also instilling trust in us. She can see exactly what's going on, and not be surprised by someone popping her hands or the unit itself between the legs without having some visual contact. Cows are fed in the parlour, and that really helps. We are now a PFLA farm, and I'll explain that. It's a Pasture for Life Association, so we are only feeding grass-based feed to the cows. So it's either they're grazing outside or they are eating homegrown silage on the farm. The treat that they get in the parlour is the only item that we buy in now, and that's a alfalfa pellet, pressed, sweetened a little bit with molasses. Really, it's just there for bribery and corruption. It's to get them to stand still and do what you want them to do, and we use it in various ways, and I'll explain that as we go along. If you look at the top left-hand picture, that's the layout of the cubicles themselves. So we went with a flexible green wand. That's got some advantages for the cow in that she can really adapt the area to how she wants to lie, and has a lot of flexibility. It does mean that we go through a lot of bedding because the cows do have the ability to stand up and turn round rather than just reversing out. We have since put in some more standard cubicles that are still plastic based and fairly flexible, and we find that keeps much cleaner. In the future, I think we'll go back to a more traditional shape of cubicle. But the green ones work very well. Given the choice, the cows will always choose them. As I say, it gives them a lot of flexibility, but it also makes it really easy for the calves to join them. The center picture with the calf at the front there, that shows the creep area. So either side of the cubicles, on one side of the shed, essentially we've got two separate buildings joined together. We have a creep area for the calves. It's just a simple wooden board that stops the cow from getting into that area, and the calves will use it quite a bit. They really enjoy that space, a bit of time with their peers and time away from mum, much to her frustration at most times. Often we find cows standing at the ends of the creep, calling the calves out and saying, "Come on, time for food. Just want to know you're there." On the left-hand side of the shed, which is the top left-hand picture, we have a full contact area. So that is for newborns up to about 9 weeks of age, and the calves have complete access to mum at all time, 24 hours a day. We don't separate them when they come to the parlour. They will physically separate themselves. So the calves have learned very quickly, actually, there's no reason for me to go there. I'm just going to have to stand around and wait for mum. I'll just stay here. But it takes maybe a fortnight for the calves to really become confident enough that they know mum's going to return. On the opposite side of the shed, so we have two, as I said, we've divided the shed into two. One area is completely free access, and on the other side of the shed, we have an area which is more of a fixed creep with cubicles that match the cow area, and that allows us to do our nighttime separation, which I'll come to in a minute. Thank you. So it was 2012 when we first trialed it. So what was born in the autumn of that year, and we got happy cows because they got to have the calves with them. They thought it was fantastic to begin with. But in the traditional system that we had been operating, we would leave the calf with the cow, ensure that it suckled at least once, 24 hours with mum, and then as she came to the parlour for the first time, we would scoop that calf away and pop it into our calf rearing house. So there was a level of trust there that we had to gain, because what confused the cows now was, well, you're taking me to the parlour. Is this the time that you're going to take that calf away? So initially we would take the calf with her to the parlour. The parlour, with the way it's designed, it allowed us to stand the calf with the cow so she could still see it. But when we came into the main part of the barn, every time we brought those cows out or tried to take the cows out, we got a huge amount of resistance. They were just stressing out what's going to happen next. Is it this time you're taking the calf away? What are we going to return to? Are we going to find some are gone and some are still here? There was just a complete lack of trust between the cows and us. And to add to that confusion, we were confused because we didn't really know what was the best way to do it. So we were getting a bit stressed out about trying to make things work, and we would try new things but not give them time to bed in. We were trying something for a couple of days and go, right, that's not working, let's try something different. The cows were not showing estrus. We calved everything in that autumn period, so that our calving block is October to mid-December, and by the time we hit February of the following year, we had about 200 litres in the tank from about 500 cows, and we had nothing back in calf for the following autumn because the cows are not showing estrus. We had low milk, and we also had low solids. This was a big learning curve for us, and we have spoken to midwives who've been on our tour since, and they say that actually it's a very human element of it, and women will do the same, and that they hold on to the butterfat, subconsciously hold on to the butterfat for the calf. So even though we were getting some milk in the parlour, it was coming out maybe 1 or 2% butterfat, and it was certainly no use for making cheese. So it was a real learning curve, and learning what we needed to do to make the system work, but also allowing the cows to adapt to the system and learn. But you know, we were just got a grant for £1.5 million. We'd invested £500,000. That came from outside investment, money borrowed from the bank, and we had nothing to show for it. So it got to February, I think almost exactly, what would that be? Well, 2013, the February of 2013, David just walked in and said, look, stop, we've got to go back to separating the cows and calves and have a real rethink of what we were going to do next. Thank you. So we needed to answer those questions. How do we improve milk letdown? The milk letdown was probably the biggest struggle initially. And I have to say that the chap who was the herdsman at the time, I've only been in this role for the last 7 years. One of the biggest conflicts we had was that he wasn't interested in the system. He didn't see what we were trying to fix, didn't see the all the issues that we were trying to cover as being a problem, and that really was a difficult thing because we needed somebody to drive the project forward. And if your focus isn't on achieving that goal, then that was difficult. Milk letdown, it's improved greatly with time, but it's also improved by having a structure to the system. And now I think I treat the dairy as I would any other dairy. We were trying to change so many things that we were just confusing the cow, and actually what we needed to do was just give her milked at the same time, milked in the same way, the same protocols in the parlour, the same atmosphere, the same, and build that trust between the cow. And we've now got that. Well, I'll discuss that more in a moment. How to stimulate estrus, that was probably the simplest thing to solve, in that we vasectomized one of the bull calves on the farm and added him to the group. And having that vasectomized bull in the shed, he was about 18 months old, so he was big enough to be showing his dominance and to do all the things that a bull does. And that generated estrus, and we've continued doing that all the way through now. Colostrum management was an issue. We were initially, and we had done in the past, we'd never tubed calves. We would just allow the calf to suckle. We would then collect the colostrum for 3 days and feed that straight back to the calf from the parlour. And we continued to do that, and that worked fantastically because we had a brand new shed. There was no pathogens in the shed. Everything worked really, really well. However, given time, those pathogens built up, and we ended up with a lot of cryptosporidium through the second and third batches of calves. So we've really tightened up on our colostrum management. Again, I'll go through that in a minute. Pneumonia needed to be recovered as well. We were getting a lot of pneumonia. We weren't sure if that was down to cows and calves sharing the same space. But if we were getting them to live long enough because of the cryptosporidium, they were then getting pneumonia. So again, all these things had to change. The time scale for when we were doing things, initially, any changes to management were done when we could, because we were doing several other projects or other seasonal jobs, silage and that sort of thing. That was all done in-house. So we needed to tighten that up and give ourselves a goal so that we had something to measure against as well. And weaning stress, that was really, really difficult because we would suckle these calves and then get to the point of weaning. We've taken this now to 5.5 to 6 months before we wean the calves, and that was extremely stressful if we just did what we did initially, excuse me, which was shut the gate and just say that's it, no more milk today. And I've literally been stood in the parlour with ear defenders on because of the sheer volume of noise from cows and calves, and extremely stressful for everybody. So we really had to go back to look at how to improve these things. Thank you. I must say that during the time of the rethink, I actually ran away, not quite literally, to another farm close by, very different system, 1,500 cows, milk 3 times a day, much more of an intensive dairy. And that was for my own personal gain. I could, having helped devise the project, I could see what needed to be done, but I am not a farmer. I came into the business purely by accident. I originally started in the visitor side of the business and moved to the farm, which gave me a different perspective on the project itself, perhaps, but meant I had a huge amount to learn about managing cows as well. So I actually left for 4 years and worked as assistant herdsman at a much larger enterprise, and came back to the farm 7 years ago. And that experience helped me to then implement the changes that were needed to be done to make the system work. In the meantime, while I was gone, they had restarted the project about 18 months before I returned to the farm, with an idea of how to do it, but were perhaps lacking the skills to get there, which is why eventually David invited me to come back to the farm. So where are we at the moment? Well, we have 120 dairy cows. They are a three-way cross, so we're looking for a high vig cow, high vigor. We're using Swedish Red, which was our base. We had started to cross with Montbéliards when we devised the project, because we were looking for something more dual purpose, and we wanted at the time for those bull calves to have a little bit more value and to be able to finish that bit quicker. However, doing that initial cross to Montbéliard meant that we did lose a certain amount of milk. The vigor wasn't quite there, so we, having said that we wouldn't have Holsteins, we added that in as our third cross. And now what we do is we breed a cow with Swedish Red heritage is bred to Montbéliard, and Montbéliard is bred to the Holstein, and the Holstein goes back to the Swedish Red. So that three-way cross continues today. We're obviously retaining all our dairy heifers, excuse me, and using those as replacements. But we also have pedigree Angus bull on the farm, or 2 bulls, and we're using those to sweep up anything that we don't want to breed from for replacements, and to give us some beef cattle to sell as well. So how do we manage the system? Well, excuse me, cows spend the first 24 hours isolated now in a purpose-built calving box. We have 12 calving boxes on the farm, which gives us a lot of scope for cows calving closely together. And the main reason being that they'll be in that area for about 3 to 4 days. So we needed to have capacity to run cows and calves together in the calving area. Once the calf is born, either by assistance or hopefully, and majority of the time they calve easily enough themselves, we ensure that the calf suckles first. We've now changed the system so we don't have any dairy bull calves, because I'm only using sex semen. That's predominantly to guarantee that the cows that I want to breed from, in order to build the herd, I'm picking the cows that work best for the system. The advantage of that is that the calves get up very quickly. Heifer calves just seem to have so much more spark than a bull calf. They'll get up quickly and they'll usually suckle themselves. But if they don't, we intervene and help the calf to suckle initially. We can't, well, how best to explain this? We want to see that calf suckle for at least 5 minutes on at least 2 teats. And even if we're assisting, we want to have the confidence to be able to step away and that calf to find that teat again. And only at that point do we then tube the calf with another 4 litres of colostrum. So they do get a lot of colostrum in that first 2 hours, really, of being born. That colostrum is there. The extra colostrum is just me hedging my bets and guaranteeing that they've had what they need to, especially from heifers that might not potentially have the quality of colostrum that we want. When the cow comes to the parlour, we then milk her after the first 24 hours. We take anything that she gives us and we then freeze that for the next calf born into the system. So first 24 hours with mum in the calving box, ensuring that that bond is there, and I want to see that repeat suckling as well. Very lucky we've got cameras in the shed, and I can actually monitor that from anywhere on the farm through my mobile phone. And you know, on a daily basis, we're in and out of that area a lot, so we're seeing what's happening, and and ensuring that the calf is suckling again. Once we're confident that's all happening, then we can end the isolation period, open up the calving box and create a larger area where all the cows can interact together and the calves can interact together as well. It's really interesting watching the body language in here, because what will happen is mum will come out and go to the feed area and then pop back to the calf, and that's usually the next 24 hours. So she's growing in confidence to leave the calf there, knowing that it'll be there when she comes back. Cows will go around and they'll check all the other calves and just monitor, who else is in the area. And then it's another, after that second 20, so 48 hours now into the system, the calf starts to be a bit more adventurous, and they'll go and meet their peers. They'll meet the other cows face to face. They'll start to wander out and explore, and but always return to mum, and you're always looking for that reconnection with mum. So we're looking at this area for a minimum of 3 days. If it's a heifer, if I've got a set of twins from any cows, then I can push that as long as I want to, and as long as I think she needs. But usually after 3 to 4 days, calf's up, strong, confident, and we have to have that because we've got automatic scrapers in the main part of the shed. So we really need to know that calf is going to get up and get on and be fine in there. So good observation and monitoring from us, and once they've had that 3 to 4 days, we can move them into the main barn. Thank you. How do we manage things from there? Well, for the first 5 months, we're only milking that cow once a day, and that has varying amounts of milk. What we usually see is that initially the calf can't take all the milk from mum. It's just not physically big enough. So we get the usual spike and lactation curve that you would see. But from about 6 weeks, what we tend to see is that the volume of milk from mum starts to decrease as the calf is getting bigger and stronger. And what we've now incorporated in is some separation time from 6 weeks of age. So we milk the cow in the morning as normal. We then allow the calves to be with mother all day until around 4 o'clock, which is when we would normally do an afternoon milking. And at that point, we then feed the cow with some more parlour nuts, and we just pop that over the top of the silage that you see in the top picture there. That encourages mum to the feed barrier. While she's not looking, then we just walk the calves through into the creep area. Sounds simple. It is now that the cows are used to the system. Initially, we had to, when they first trialed this, going back 8 years now, they had to physically lock the cows in order to get the calves away. Now cows are confident, they know the system, and we are replacing heifers into the system that were born in this system. So they know the system as well, they're confident, and it really does, it just takes me 5 minutes to do this in an evening. Place the feed out for the cows, walk through the shed, and move the calves into the creep. They can still see mum from the creep, and they can, through the gates that we close and the way that we have the bars in that area, they can still have physical contact. It just means that the calf can't suck. It also gives the calves confidence because they build that peer bond with their compatriots, and that we then feed them. They have their own supply of silage. They have some calf nuts for them as well. So they're getting used to that whole dietary change as well. We monitor the live weight gain of the calves. We do that about every 6 weeks. So at a point where we do any management change, like the nighttime separation, then we weigh them initially to see what we've got, and then we can monitor that going forwards. What we tend to find is by the time we get to 6 weeks of age, we're looking at a calf that's already well over 100 kilos in weight, and putting on somewhere in the region of 1 to 1.5 kilos per day. which is a substantial gain. And if you look at them against a bucket reared calf, it's a huge difference. I've now got everything. I'm talking right now, everything that's born in October now, then I'm already pushing well over 200 kilos on those calves. And that's important. Those gaining that calf weight, because we're losing a third of our milk to feed the calves, we reckon these calves are taking about 1,500 litres, maybe even 2,000 to 2,500 litres on some cows. We're getting the live weight gain in the calves, but we're obviously losing financially on what we're not getting in the parlour. But we're gaining that by having a calf that we can sell at anything from 8 months old onwards. In fact, we've actually sold some at the point of weaning at 6 months of age, at 300 kilos as rose veal. That's something I would like to push further in the future. It's was working really well up until COVID, but I'll come back to that in a minute. So we continue that from 6 weeks of age, we're separating at night, and we carry that through right the way through every night at the same time, in the same way, right the way through to the point of weaning. And depending on where they're born in the system, it's somewhere between 5 to 6 months before we wean them. We'll also want to see that they're about 250 kilos or more in weight, because anything that's smaller than that just tends to be held back a little and doesn't get further live weight gain as we go forward. At the point where we wean the cows, wean the calves, we have a plastic tab. There's no spikes or anything. I should have brought one with me, but you'll perhaps see it in the next photograph. And it just prevents the calf from drinking. And we use that for about 8 to 9 days. So we change the routine by putting the tab in. At that point, we also change the routine because we take mum to the parlour, and we start to go back to a more conventional twice-a-day milking setup from then. But it takes that 8 or 9 days, not only for the calf to understand that the milk supply is now stopped, but also for the cow to become more relaxed and give us everything back in the parlour. The transition is amazing, and as we go through this now, we're into our 8th year of doing this system. There are cows that will instantly give me everything she has. They're confident, they know what's happening, and it's more for a case of the heifers coming through in the system that we just need to give them time to change and to learn that this milking's going to happen and what's going to come in the future. Our aim on a fully grass-based system is we're looking at 3,500 litres per cow in the tank for us to use to make cheese. Anything up to 4,000 litres. There are some cows now that will do well over 5,000 litres and rear a calf on top of that as well, which is on a grass-based only system I'm very proud of. I think that's working very well. If you look at last year's milk sales, take an average, we had about 80 cows milking last year. We hit that target of 3,500. And if we can do that, that's profitable. I haven't put up a slide on the economics of the system because it's slightly complicated and more David's angle. But to make it financially viable, we need that 3,500 to 4,000 litres from the cow in the tank to be processed on farm into cheese to then sell to the public. We do send a small amount of milk to OMSCO, which is the Organic Milk Supply Network, but that's just in terms of giving people holidays and time off. 95% of the milk on the farm now is used on farm to make into cheese. Thank you.
Before we go to the next slide, there's one question. Yeah. Do you test the colostrum?
We do test the colostrum. Yes, we use a refractometer to manage that. We're actually going to be part of a project with Glasgow University in this next calving block. We're going to calve again in about 50 days time, and they're actually going to take colostrum samples direct from the cow, and then do blood tests at the point where we move the calf into the shed, we're going to take a blood sample for them, and they're going to look really in depth at how this colostrum is changing and how well it's working for the calf.
Thank you.
No problem. Oh yeah, there we go. Top left-hand picture, you can see the plastic tab that the calf's wearing. As you can see, at 5 months, 6 months old, it's a sizable animal. These purely came to us by accident. I happened to be talking to someone who was supplying us with other products for the farm, and they said, oh yeah, we've seen these in Canada. It's called a quiet weaning tab, and very simply just grips the septum of the calf. It seems to be relatively painless. They don't agree with it initially, and they'll kind of give you a funny look as to say, well, what on earth is this? Why can't I get to my milk supply? But it doesn't seem to cause them any huge discomfort. They can still eat as normal, and we maybe put 2 or 3 back in a day, something like that, that will find actually fall out or got knocked out as they're putting their heads through the barrier to eat. But they work fantastically well, and they just change the whole scope of things in that we can still allow that physical contact while we wean them. Has lowered the stress levels of the cows immensely, and that has changed. We used to have issues with cows getting mastitis because they were holding on to milk, because they were stressing to give it to the calf or wanting contact with the calf. This slow transition now, and because they've got used to that nighttime separation, it really has just reduced that stress levels immensely. And although I don't know that it's absolutely perfect, I really can't see how we can do this any better. Although some farmers that I've been in touch with in the US are actually doing the nighttime separation from as little as 4 days of age. So giving them more and more time to get used to that separation. I know there's farms in Norway that are doing it, and they're actually milking on robots where the cow has to actually go through the feed area or through the robot to get to a feed area. The calf's not in that area, and then she returns to the cow. There are so many different ways of doing it. This is what we found works for us, and how we're happy to work. So this is by no means the only way to do it. The interesting thing is that as cow and calf systems have grown, everybody's doing it in a different way, and doing it in a way that suits them best. And that's really the best way, because you can only trial and see what works for you. What I will say is we avoid making changes at any critical time. So the start of the service period, I've already started the separation at least a fortnight before that, so that there's not a little potential stress area at the time when you're most wanting the cow to be showing good fertility, getting good nutrition, and not having other things to worry about. If we find that there's cows or calves that really aren't working with this the separation, we can just extend it if we need to as well. And we can just leave the tabs in and leave the calf with her longer. But initially, at the end of that 8 to 9 days period of weaning, that is the point where we just shut the gate, and that's it. There's no more contact for milk or on a daily basis. They can still see each other, they can still hear each other. They are only separated by 5 bars of the division in the shed, and very quickly everything settles down. The calves are really eating on hard food. It really does work very well. Okay, thank you. David always says, and I take it as a great compliment, that finding the right people to do this as well is a really important part of it. I think initially when I came back 7 years ago, the team that were in place at the time were brought in from other areas of the farm to help run the system, but weren't perhaps technically minded in terms of being specifically dairy people. So there was a lot of change had to come, and training that needed to be done, and everybody had to be on board with the vision of the business and what we were trying to do. As I mentioned to you before, Jim, who was the herdsman in the initial trial, just couldn't see the point of it, didn't really want to see it success. So and that and eventually rolled over to the fact that it wasn't working, and why we had to change the process and the management of the farm. So now we've got myself, I'm full-time. George, who is our stockman, he is also a herdsman, a trained herdsman as well, understands what we're looking for in terms of quality of milk, maintaining cell counts of cows, how to manage calves, and really, now that the two of us are in place, it's really driving the business forward. But it's great if people have got the vision to do this, and we've met many people that say, this is how I want to run my dairy. But unless you get the right staff and the right people that understand what you're trying to achieve, then you will find it very difficult to achieve that. Thank you.
There is a question in the chat. Do you have you had any problems with sores or wounds due to nose flaps or the nose tabs?
The nose tabs, no, nothing at all. I've been absolutely fine. I think they take a grip of the septum, but they're not, they're not clamped down on it. So we've never had any issues with that at all. They've been very good.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
We've done some academic studies with various people. Obviously, we have been the largest cow and calf dairy for quite some time in terms of the number of cows. So that's created a lot of interest. SIUC have worked very closely with us, and SAC, which is the consultancy side of the Scottish Agricultural College. We've had various audits done. We are now carbon neutral because of how we're managing the farm, and I think that's the biggest part of the message, is that it's not just about the cow and calf system. That's there in terms of how we manage the animals, clearly, but it's also there in terms of life value for us as well. But we've changed so much of the environmental aspects of the farm. David's father spent the 40 years that he was running the farm cutting down trees and draining land. We've planted trees and flooded areas, created ponds for nature. We obviously, being organic, we're not using pesticides, chemicals on the farm. So that's enhanced the biodiversity. We're managing the pasture in a way that we don't plough anymore. So we're gaining organic matter. It's a whole farm system. So that's really what we're aiming for. And the two work very well together. We've invested a huge amount in the calves themselves as well. We want to get that back. So we've been looking at different markets for those. We've also discovered through one of these academic studies that by having heifer calves at foot, the cow will deliver us more in the parlour. She is more relaxed and more confident to allow that heifer calf to be independent than she is with a bull calf. Maybe something in it. They always say that boys are mothered by the overly mothered. There's maybe something in that with the cows, but that is another reason why we switched to sex semen, and we've seen that maintained in the milk yield as well. Just to give you an idea, on today's milk, 76 cows, just over 500 litres, and 50 of those cows have got calves at foot at the moment. 30 are about to be dried off in order to calve in the spring. So they're maintaining about 7 litres per cow, which is my target. 7 litres per day per cow. There are those extremes where some cows are rearing a calf at foot and still giving me 15 litres in the parlour every day. Those tend to be the older cows that have been in the system from the start, but are also the quieter cows, the more Temperament is another study that's been done, and we're now specifically using sex semen from bulls with good temperament, because the quieter the cow, the more she will share. The Swedish red cows tend to be the ones who milk best in the parlour and fit the system well. We've also looked at different studies with looking at how it's affected us, how we the challenges and positives of adopting the system. I can say to you, having worked the 1500 cow farm, working a ridiculous schedule and extremely stressful environment, I'm very pleased I'm where I am now. Those 4 years at the big system, I've really struggled with my mental health, and partly because of what I was being asked to do in terms of how I was being asked to manage animals. Here, I've got a smaller herd, yes, but I've got so much more value from that, not only financially, weirdly, but also in terms of time with my family, time with my wife, and time to invest in myself. And that's a really important thing. I'm only tied to the parlour at the moment once a day, because we're about to dry it. The last of the cows off that are going to calve in the spring. The rest are just with calf. I'm still there 9 hours a day, because there's always stuff to do. And we know that as farmers, there's never a dull moment. But it gives me a balance of life as well. And I think that's a big part of it. Thank you. So future plans, well, as I mentioned, we're doing this study with Glasgow Vet School. That's coming up in the next couple of months. It's going to be really interesting to see how our management differs from other farms that are doing cow and calf system that are part of the project as well. We have another farm locally based up in Ayrshire. He's following a very similar setup to us, but they're only allowing the calf to suckle colostrum. They're not tubing on top. So it's going to show us the balance between the two systems. I'm excited to see what we're doing, and who knows, it may change some of our management systems as well. We're currently participating in the Transform DairyNet system. That is a European-wide project on cow and calf dairy systems. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, that it's happening at the moment. It's only started quite recently and has a 3-year lifespan, they hope. We're in small discussion groups. There is a smaller Scandinavian group, a group that's incorporating Belgium, Germany, Poland, Romania. There's a UK and Ireland group as well, and we've had, I think, 2 meetings on that now. We're looking at, there is some European funding within that group that's there to do research projects within cow and calf systems to answer some of the questions that people have. But it's really there as a knowledge transfer system where we can all learn from each other. I've already learned a huge amount about what else other people are doing and where the system's at. And we have this wealth of knowledge that hopefully you've gained something from today. And we're very willing to always pass that on. Have a look if you're interested at Transform DairyNet. It's open to everybody to join, and a really valuable thing. It's really good to see that there's now a huge growth in interest in cow and calf systems across Europe, even worldwide. I'm in constant contact with farms in North America as well, both Canada and America, that are interested in this system. Another farm in Australia. We've seen practiced in South Africa, New Zealand. It's really becoming a much more demanded thing by the public, and I think that's what was our initial driver at the start, and that's really what's going to drive it forward now. I hope through this DairyNet system we can involve the public more and make them more aware of it, and that will therefore grow demand yet again. New markets for the farm in itself. Well, the David and Wilma have got to a point now where they're into retirement or looking at very soon retiring. So we've actually sold the ice cream side of the business. That's now left the farm. It's given us another opening for more tourism in a different way, looking at liquid milk sales direct from the farm. That's always of constant interest. The only problem with that in Scotland is we're not allowed to sell raw milk. It has to be pasteurized. So it just involves another process on the farm. We're making raw milk cheese. That's absolutely fine. We can do that, but we're not allowed to sell raw milk, which is a bit of a, well, not a controversy, but something we would like to rectify. The beef and veal, as I mentioned briefly earlier, that had the rose veal that was sold from the farm, was great up until COVID, but obviously all those restaurants closing, and then that side of the business has never picked up. It's a fantastic product, a healthy way of eating beef. I would really like to see that move further forward, and for us to start doing more direct sales to the public through that beef as well from the farm. So I think I've given you a fairly good overview of where we are and the challenges that we've had. I hope you've got a few questions now, but as you can see by the timer, I've been talking for quite a while. If you've got any questions that you think of in the future, feel free to contact either myself or David. The two email addresses are there. Very happy to share our time with you, either over a Zoom call or through emails. That's absolutely fine. But thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you very much, Charles.
You're very welcome.
I will say a few words in Finnish. Onko kysymyksiä kellään? Nyt voi esittää sekä suomeksi että englanniksi. You can ask questions in English or in Finnish by opening your microphone or in chat. I have to say that I was really impressed that you brought up that perspective of well-being of humans also. Yeah, very important, and I know that specifically from, you know, I left here with 90 cows and thought I knew a lot about farming. To then go to a 1,500 cow farm, it was a bit of a culture shock, although I needed that to gain that experience of being a herdsman. But the detriment that it had to me and to the family was huge. And yeah, David is very keen to make sure that we have that work-life balance. I'm very lucky. My wife is the production manager for the cheese, so we work very closely together. We're both based on the farm, and we see each other through our working day. My children have been raised here now and are involved with the farm and hope to be in the future. So yeah, it's a really great place to be. That's really good to hear. Lisa wants to ask about the pastures. How do you let the cows in the fields, and how do you manage that? Yeah, okay. So we're grazing from late April, hopefully through until November. That's the plan. As much time out at grass as possible. With the cows that are weaned, so I will start to wean the group that have calves at the moment as I start to calve the next group in at the end of March. So those cows that are weaned will go out with paddock grazed with an electric fence. That fence is moved twice a day, giving them fresh grazing. So very much a kind of standard system. With the cows and calves, what we tend to do is we use specific paddocks to graze the cows. No electric fences. They just get that for the period that we feel there is enough forage in front of them. And depending on the size of the paddock, can be anything up to a week, could be anything as little as 2 or 3 days. Once we come to the separation outside, what we've done is we've split some of the paddocks into smaller paddocks. So we still maintain the same separation that we do inside, but we do it outside in the summertime.
and we simply walk the cows along the track. We split the calves off using a small gate. It literally takes one person to push the herd and one person to stand at the gate and do the separation. Calves go into a paddock, which is within visual sight of mum. She can be the opposite side of the road that runs through the farm. She could be 2 fields across, but as long as they've got visual contact, they're usually pretty happy about that. Certainly for the first few nights, we put them in the field directly neighbouring the calf creek. But again, they learn so quickly. Calves go through that process of being wanting to be with mum all the time, to then happy to spend time with their peers, to then just using her as a milk bar. So we work with that confidence of the calves to move them through the system. But grazing wise, yeah, it just depends on where they are, either an electric fence or just free paddocks.
Is the grazing common practice in UK or only in some farms?
It's becoming more and more that cows are constantly housed inside, unfortunately. Certainly the farm I worked at in the past, just the sheer number of cows wouldn't allow us to graze because there wasn't enough grazing close to the buildings. You tend to get one or the other. But I said most people now are pushing to use a total mixed ration, and they're always looking to promote productivity. What we see is productivity comes from cows at grass. We'll get a better response from them than we will from silage. So even though we're making very good quality silage, it's just that environment. Being out in the world, I think, sun on your back, it's good for us and it's good for them.
Yeah, and it's good for biodiversity. So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And well, I want to ask. You mentioned that at least I got the idea that you have thought about the sustainability in quite a wide range in your farm. So what is the atmosphere in the UK in all these sustainability issues? Is it like farmers like doing more sustainability, or is it like this is something we have to do, and or is it something like we don't want to do it?
Yeah, no, I get. We're still seen as the outsider very much, and David and I, because we've both been quite outspoken about what we don't like about the conventional system and why we're doing what we're doing. I've lost a lot of friends over what we're doing, but are they truly your friends if they won't stand by you? On the diversity side, sustainability of the farm, it's now obviously being driven by the lack of, the removal of the European funding. So farmers are being encouraged to be more sustainable, and they're going to have to give public good back to get any kind of support from the government. And I think most farmers will do that in a positive way, but certainly there's a degree of farmers that are doing it begrudgingly, purely to get the payment, and they feel that they're being held back from being productive. Productivity has to come from sustainability, not the other way around, I think is the way I would look at it. We now produce as much forage on the farm as an organic system as we did when we were a conventional system using all the pesticides and sprays. But we've also gained the biodiversity in the farm and in the structure of the farm itself. Yes, there's definitely, from the farming community in the UK, there is a definite feeling that they are being forced into doing things in a certain way, and there is a certain amount of backlash from that, unfortunately. But interestingly, we have lots of events running here for farmers with other farming groups that bring people here to show how things can be done. And it's now really encouraging to see that the smaller scale farmers, kind of numbers that we have ourselves, are coming here more and more often and saying, right, we're not going to go organic, but what can we do that you're doing that saves us money in terms of the products we have to buy into the farm, but also will help with the sustainability of the system. So that's really encouraging. I think the big guys, they're doing their own thing. We're never going to win them over, but there's a future there yet for the rest of us. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Do we have more questions, Charles? Is there anyone brave enough to open the microphone? It's maybe too much. But I thank you. It was a really, really good show for you, and it's so inspiring to hear. And also Ann-Helena and Helky, who talked in the morning. So we have the really good day of heard how in different farms this cow and calf system is working. And I think the common thing in all three is that the animals are doing well, but also the people are doing well. And people are finding it very, very good thing that to interact with the cows when the cows are happy.
Yeah.
So it infects in very many ways. This has been a really, really good session today. And I think I will stop the recording now.